Good afternoon. I'm here to present a project that is not really a museum, but rather a methodology to work around two questions that I was wondering, or I was asking myself all the time when I was beginning beginning a course with the students in the last 2 years of high school. The first question is how to talk about the Colombian armed conflict in the school, in the classroom, actually. And second question is how do you make this thing that we're talking about in the classroom a significant fact for the students? These two questions made me search for material, and there were no books or no methodologies to talk about this, and what is produced in the books is at a high level, and the students cannot connect to it, or people tend not to talk about it with the students. So in the historical memory, I found a new narrative to talk with the students. However, one of the problems that was recurrent was the content. So what I thought about was about bringing a new methodology to work, and I found two points that helped me develop this methodology. What are these 2 points? Number one is to try and show the students that somehow we can all have a memory. Historical memory is not something that only people with a PhD can do in a very isolated thinking tower, but rather as a student they can exercise their memory too, and in exercising their memory they can understand something that is very complex in Colombia, which is the fact that the armed conflict relates to everyone, because the new generations think that the conflict is something of the past and something that happens far away in the rural areas to someone else, but it is important to debunk those myths. So this new methodology started, and the starting point was getting familiar with the concepts. So for the first three or 4 weeks, we started to work with press clippings and testimony, which has to do with the language, so that students would become familiar. And once they collected all of the material, the students go to their environments, and based on these questions that were built following the testimony, we defined 3 moments: who the person was, what was the violent fact or event that happened to them, and what happened afterwards. And so they started asking questions about significant or representative objects. Later on, students started to collect those objects, and with those objects, we created shelves inspired in the novel The Museum of Innocence. And if you look at these shelves, you see everyday life. You don't think about a semantic field that makes you think about the armed conflict, but rather these everyday objects that could be in anybody's house. Those objects were then incorporated into a touch screen with the software, and you can see the same objects but separated. Then you can touch on the screen, for example, on that telephone, and when you touched on that, you got a bigger image of the object and later a fragment of that story. If you use your cell phone for the code, you could touch also this method of violence, and within the wide range of violence, the students could see where that story fell. Also, there was another mechanism to trigger reflection, thinking about how did the conflict affect me. So visitors had two questions, which is, can you write your own story? And also, do you recognize yourself as part of the conflict? Also, there was another mechanism for participation, which was writing letters to the people in the stories. Those letters are being transcribed to put together a book. And there are two 30-second videos where students tell you what the project meant to them. It's an important tool because it's a tool that we have as citizens in Colombia to have information about victims that we wouldn't have any other way. This information is information that comes directly from the source and the victim and the families of the victims. And unlike what we know in the soap operas that depict the fight, in the soap operas they try to make the killers the heroes, and in this work we have the perspective of the victim. And as Colombian citizens, we can express our solidarity to these victims, not just. I think that it is important for these museums to have the school students participate so that we know that peace is not built by sitting at an important table or being a politician, but rather the peace starts to be built based on memory and recognizing the victims. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, it is really important for kids to understand that what you learn in school is not just static knowledge, but knowledge that you can apply to projects that help build a better country. To finish off, I want to say that this project was done thanks to a grant given to us by the Center of Historical Memory. Thank you.